James Franklin is taking a dozen former Nittany Lions with him to Virginia Tech. Let's talk about the impact on the Hokies and the impact on Penn State.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's another epic Locked On crossover. We got Zach Seyko from Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. And thank you so much to the Everydayers for making this crossover episode your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's been so much crossover with Penn State and the ACC, especially Virginia Tech. We'll talk transfer portal. We'll talk whether or not Virginia Tech can actually compete for an ACC championship next year, because for the most part, the conference is pretty wide open. And, of course, all this James Franklin stuff. So, Zach, of course, you've been working tirelessly to cover all of this on Locked On Nittany Lions with your former head coach trying to get the band back together in Blacksburg. Talk about some of the dozen former Nittany Lions that are now in Blacksburg, including the potential new starting quarterback in Virginia Tech and the impact they can have for Franklin.
And I think that's a guarantee. I think Ethan Grunkemeier is the starter in waiting. As much as I liked Bryce Baker as a prospect, I don't think there should be any doubt that Grunkemeier is going to be the starting quarterback for Virginia Tech over the next couple or 3 years max, right? I will start with this for maybe the sake of controversy, but also my 2 cents on it. If I'm Virginia Tech, I'm a little underwhelmed here. I'm kind of disappointed because a lot of the discourse, a lot of the chatter was that Virginia Tech was going to raid Penn State's roster, that they were going to get stars, they were going to get assistant coaches, everybody in between there was going to be a pipeline that opens up to Virginia Tech. And that didn't happen. Matt Campbell, we'll talk about, I know Kenton's going to give me a lot of flack for the Iowa State players all coming over to Penn State and that they're the Nittany Cyclones. I'm waiting for that. But Matt Campbell did an outstanding job of player retention at Penn State first and foremost and build a foundation. I think of players like Tony Rojas. People were trying to, it was, whether it was social media rumors or message board chatter, but there was this anticipation that, you're going to get, if you're Virginia Tech, you'll get Amari Campbell and Tony Rojas.
And Rojas was in some Miami conversations for a hot second too.
Exactly. So, and that's the thing. Matt Campbell, for somebody that seemed like, he's going to walk out the door one way or another, he stayed at Penn State. There were players that were from the state of Virginia, that Anthony Donko, for example, he is an all-conference caliber offensive lineman. He could have went back to his home state. He stays at Penn State, doesn't transfer to Virginia Tech. And then the assistants. Okay, you pick up a quarterback's coach that Penn State fans were good riddance. He can go. But what about Anthony Poindexter? Dan Connor was expected to take the linebacker job. Deion Barnes was expected to take the defensive line job. There was hope maybe, do you get Stan Drayton? Do you get any of the other do you get Terry Smith, the interim head coach? He wants to be Franklin's number 2 guy at Virginia Tech. And they didn't. The Hokies didn't get any of that. You get Ethan Grunkemeier. You get a couple, maybe a few capable starters. But most of the players that were there still haven't proven much. And I don't know that a majority of them even start their first year at Virginia Tech. So if I'm a Hokie fan, I am disappointed. And I think it's cope if you're not.
You feel that way, Kenton?
That's very interesting coming from a Penn State guy for this reason and this reason only, right? I don't even mind the Nittany Cyclones thing and all that. I don't mind all that. Hey, funny. Coaches leave, they take their players with them and all that. But in the composite rankings compiled from 247 and ESPN, Virginia Tech finishes with the 24th ranked recruiting class in this year and the 14th ranked portal class, as opposed to Penn State, who finished with, and I cannot make this up, the 71st recruiting class in the nation. They are the worst recruiting class in the state of Pennsylvania, including Temple. And then
the situation was rough, though. They had no head coach for a long time.
But the redeeming part of it, which we have seen, they've done well in the portal, being the 4th overall team in the portal. So I'm a little bit confused as to how Virginia Tech is supposed to be underwhelmed with 14th and 24th, but Penn State fans are supposed to be over the moon about 71st and 4th. I'm a little bit, the math don't exactly math there. Help me out, Seyko. Tell me I'm doing the math wrong. Help me with how I'm doing the equation.
I mean, maybe it's because, okay, I'm not saying Virginia Tech fans can't be happy and can't be content. You upgraded your head coach, James Franklin. There is optimism there. I'm saying from the perspective, a lot of the chatter that I was listening to, and maybe it was just, just trying to take jabs on social media, maybe start to, maybe bring up some fears that Penn State fans are going to lose their roster. Who knows what it was? But when you don't get, okay, hey, Dan Connor's going to be your linebackers coach. It doesn't happen. You're supposed to get star players. Tennessee, I know they're not in the ACC, but Tennessee, they should be the ones that feel the best out of this because they took a majority of Penn State's roster. Well, they only got 4 players. You got to combine, I think, 1,000 snaps between all the players that they got. They got more out of 4 players from the portal between Chaz Coleman and Xavier Gilliam and Amari Campbell and Dejon Lane. And then they get Anthony Poindexter and they get Jim Knowles and they get Andrew Jackson, a former assistant defensive line coach. That's kind of what Virginia Tech, I was anticipating for them, that you would get star key impact players across the board, right? That was the understanding. And that didn't happen. So I'm not saying, hey, you can't be content with what you got. You got a dozen recruits, a dozen portal guys. But if Chaz Coleman ended up at Virginia Tech, okay, Amari Campbell ends up at surely somebody, Anthony Poindexter. No, and they all go to Tennessee. Yeah. So that's a King Mac, right? King Mac ends up at the Wolfpack, NC State, right?
There you go, Kenton.
I'm mad at it. You know what I mean? I'm mad at it. I get where you're going.
Let me ask you guys this. Kenton, I could start with you, and then Zach, you can weigh in, obviously, because nobody knows more about James Franklin in this room than Zach does. I know we're going to see a lot of this between now and football season. People will be asking the question, can Virginia Tech be a dark horse to get to the conference championship game? Because if Miami is able to get Darien Mensah over the finish line with what Miami's bringing back, you would assume the Hurricanes, who haven't actually won the ACC yet, would be favorites to win the ACC next year. But then after Miami, there's a lot of uncertainty, Kenton. I mean, is Clemson going to bounce back? We've had a couple of rough years for Dabo. I don't think Florida State's any good with their lame duck head coach still in place. SMU kind of came close at the end of the day. Virginia had a magical year, but I don't know, Kenton, do you take Virginia Tech? I think Virginia Tech at the very least is in the mix. Can they be a dark horse to get to the ACC championship?
Well, Jackson Holder and I the other day were talking about teams in terms of stock and investment, right? If you're saying buy them as a dark horse, where you put a little money on it and you're not banking your savings on them being there at the end of the year, but you're saying, I'll sprinkle something on it. And if the returns are great, we're going to live like kings off this thing. Absolutely. Absolutely, I'll take Virginia Tech as a dark horse. Would I take them as my favorite to be second in the conference or to be in Charlotte at the end of the year next year, which is where the ACC Championship is played, Seyko, just in case you didn't know? No, I wouldn't take that. I wouldn't take them as this is the horse that I'm going to ride and put all my money on. But again, as a dark horse, absolutely. Do I see them finishing top 6-ish at worst? Absolutely. I think highly of James Franklin as a coach, and I think much more highly of him than most people do, because I think 10 wins a year in the Big Ten or SEC, I don't give a damn how you got there. That is, it's untenable to think about firing that guy. And I've said this about Penn State, and people think I got a gripe with Penn State. I say this about every single school in the Power Four, except 4 to 5. If you get 10 wins a year, be happy with that. That's even if you never get the upset, even if you never get, I'm telling you right now, I think that James Franklin is a great coach that's going to get them close. But do I bet on them to go? No. But do I bet on them as a dark horse? Absolutely. Easy money.
What do you think, Zach?
In year one, it's one of those, because Duke was 7-5, right, and snuck their way into the ACC title because of some tiebreakers and stuff. That's what I could maybe see for Virginia Tech, right? That's that's an interesting schedule, right? And I know we can talk more about it here in the upcoming segment as well, but Virginia Tech has the foundation, has the building blocks to be 7-5, 8-4, and that's what fans are hoping for, right? So it's kind of it's a matter of expectations. So anybody that's from Virginia Tech that is listening to this saying that, well, we're still happy we got James Franklin, good. Because it was, well, are we going to be 3-9 this season? Are we going to be 4-8? Look at our recruiting classes. They're way outside of the top 50, the top 75. And now you have a solid group year in and year out. So it's kind of what, and Penn State fans, and this is part of my perspective, is you should want better. You should want more. And VT is just, hey, let's get started. Let's start with 7-5, 8-4. And then we'll talk about ACC titles, going 10-2 on a consistent basis, that type of thing, because there's nowhere to go but up for Virginia Tech. But I also do want to reset. I just want to have a conversation about it. Let's not ignore the fact that maybe it's because Virginia Tech was trying to aim for the stars. You still hit the moon in the process. Mm-hmm. Like I said, overall, you just kind of cross everybody off the list. No superstar. The influx of assistant coaches, none of that. But you still got Franklin, and you're still headed in a positive direction.
Well, when we come back, I want to break down the Penn State side of it because from the outside looking in, the coaching search looked very chaotic, but boy, did they stick the landing. Like I thought the Matt Campbell hire ended up being great, and sometimes it's not about the journey, it's about the destination. You want to keep it locked right here. It's a Locked On Nittany Lions, Locked On ACC crossover, and we're only getting started. Folks, FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack on every NFL game day. Thank you so much for making this Locked On ACC, Locked On Nittany Lions crossover your first listen. And make sure, if you're an everydayer, you make it official by joining the Everydayer Club. You want to click the link in the show notes below. Find your favorite show, the Everydayer Club. You get exclusive ad-free episodes. You get one-on-one texting. You get exclusive Discord access. You even get a sweet 15% discount on the Locked On merch store. Like, people were asking me for years, see the hat I'm wearing? You can get one of these for yourself. The Locked On merch is awesome, so make sure you check out the Everydayer Club. Click the link in the show notes below. Become an Everydayer for Locked On ACC, Locked On Nittany Lions, Locked On Wolfpack, Locked On Canes, and all of your other favorite shows. All right, so Zach, I'm sure it was probably pretty stressful covering the Penn State coaching search. A lot of names came up, a lot of them were shot down, and then ultimately the guy that you landed, I think, was better than some of the guys who allegedly turned the job down.
Yeah, that's the right way to look at it. You can say, and you're not going to get the Penn State homer take from me. They lucked into this. They basically fell into success. I have no idea how. Just because I don't know what good fortunes are supposed to come away from firing a head coach that was successful, right? But Matt Campbell, why he wasn't one of the primary candidates, the initial reporting from, I think, a bunch of different places, the New York Times, ESPN, all came to the conclusion that, well, it was just kind of lost in the communication, lost in translation, if you will, that there was an agent that they reached out to. Well, that agent wasn't affiliated with Matt Campbell anymore, and he represents himself, and he never passed on that information. So Matt Campbell never really knew that Penn State was interested in him, and he wasn't outreaching to them. That's kind of the understanding here. So I am not afraid to admit that Penn State, Pat Kraft got very, very lucky with this search that became the laughing stock, the joke of college football. all's well that ends well, I suppose, but certainly it was a 50, 60-day roller coaster that they could have ended up with Brian Daboll, and I tried to kind of talk myself into the vision of it. I am so glad they got Matt Campbell, because I do think he's somebody that can continue to sustain success of, winning at a high level, being a factor in the Big Ten on a season by season basis. That's really it. It's being relevant, but let's, Kenton, you said, hey, you shouldn't fire a coach that gets you to 10 wins at a minimum every single year. It was just, we've hashed this out before. It was the same song and dance. Matt Campbell is supposed to win that Ohio State game every few years. You don't have to, well, here we go again. It's Ohio State. Well, here we go again. Michigan's peaking. Well, here's Oregon now. USC is now going to be peaking. And I'm not necessarily anticipating that in year one for them to go on the road and defeat Michigan, go win against a USC team that is going to be one of the favorites in the Big Ten, or I think a dark horse contender to win the conference or get to the conference title game for 2026. But that's the idea, is that he wins those games, and it gets Penn State over that threshold where you knew they knocked on the door and they got turned away every single time. That's the big game. That's the metaphor for the big game every single time in 12 years.
We asked a very interesting question of Virginia Tech. Do we think that they're in position to be a dark horse for the ACC based on year one? And I hear so often everybody asks what the expectation is for James Franklin. But Matt Campbell, lots of people love the hire. Lots of people believe they lucked into things. So answer me this one, Zach. Do you think Penn State is a team that this year is going to be competing for a Big Ten championship? Do you see this as a team that you're like, hey, I feel comfortable with Matt Campbell. I feel comfortable with all the Cyclones he brought in. I feel comfortable with everything going on here. We'll be in that conversation, and we'll win those games that we could not with Franklin in year one.
100%, because, and here's the thing with 2026, they are closer to 10-2 and finding their way closer to the playoff than they are being 6-6, 7-5 in a rebuild. And it goes back to what I said. It goes back to what I said in the other segment, is that they were able to retain some of the best that Penn State had to offer. Tony Rojas, Kobe Howard, offensive lineman Anthony Donko, Cooper Cousins, Max Granville, guys that I did think, hey, these are 50-50 players. Who knows if they're going to come back? Oh, they came back, and you built a foundation there. Then you add a starting quarterback, a starting running back, 2 starting wide receivers, 2 starting tight ends, starting offensive line, multiple starting caliber linebackers, all conference caliber defensive backs. You combine all this veteran talent together, and this team can absolutely, the expectation can be, hey, they can be close to 10-2. We'll see how it all unfolds. Hey, Matt Campbell hasn't coached in the Big Ten. Maybe the competition might be a slap in the face early on. That's fairly reasonable to think that, okay, but this isn't, they might go 5-7 at best, 6-6. They sneak into a bowl game. No. And especially with where I imagine you guys aren't familiar with their schedule, but they are playing a lot of easier competition. I say easier.
That's the big key.
In the Big Ten, the schedule is very favorable. The ones that I have circled on the schedule are at Michigan and against USC. Those are 2, but everybody else, the expectation is that Penn State should be either an even matchup or favored in those games.
So hypothetically, let's say James Franklin goes through this year, and I'm sorry, not James Franklin, Matt Campbell goes through this year and has a 9-3 year. He wins all the games that he's supposed to, except he loses one that he should not. Mm-hmm. Do you look at that as like hey, this was a success of the year, or this was a failure of the year?
It's a net neutral to me, because like I said, I want them. I don't expect them, but I do anticipate, hey, like I said, I framed it as they can win 10 games. Mm-hmm. So 9-3, it's not disappointing, right? 6-6, that sneaking into a bowl game, that's a problem. That's a red flag. And it's like, oh shoot, we really have some hiring remorse here with Matt Campbell and James Franklin. This isn't what we anticipated. But if they go 9-3, again, that's where you can chalk it up to, okay, it's the Big Ten. He's never coached against Big Ten. He's never coached against Big Ten competition like that. There might be a team that sneaks up on them that we're not really necessarily anticipating. Maybe Minnesota, if, for example, is better than advertised, right? They're making a ton of portal moves. I can't project them right now as we sit here in January. So if there's a game that they drop, but if it's multiple, right? If it's 2, if it's 3, and it's a 7-5 season, and this team's at the middle to the bottom of the Big Ten, then it's okay. We got to reassess, and we'll see how year 2 goes with 2027, especially since the 2026 recruiting class wasn't that great, as you pointed out. But 2027 is supposed to be the pinnacle. They're going to look to take 35 to 40 recruits in 2027.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, I want to talk some transfer portal. You know, Zach mentioned King Mack, formerly of Penn State, is now at NC State. NC State also, you know, they got a receiver from Miami and Chance Robinson, and they might be getting another because, Kenton, I am predicting JoJo Trader to likely end up at NC State. And then, of course, Miami has some irons in the fire, including a legal battle with Darien Mensah. We have a lot to get to because the portal keeps turning on this brand new crossover episode, Locked on Nittany Lions and Locked on ACC. You want to keep it locked. Guys, tax season doesn't have to take over your life, believe it or not. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out your forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it gives real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you so much for making this Locked on ACC, Locked on Nittany Lions crossover your first listen. Zach Seyko from Locked on Nittany Lions, Kenton Gibbs from Locked on ACC and Locked on Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked on Canes. All right, guys, so I've lost a lot of sleep this week trying to track the Darien Mensah situation. He puts his name in the portal a few hours before the deadline. He is being sued by Duke. They had a temporary restraining order that allows him to enter the portal but does not allow him to enroll or sign anywhere. Miami is the presumed destination. But then as of this morning, fellas, Kenton, I'll start with you on this one. Pete Nakos of On3 reports in an affidavit filed Friday by Darien Mensah, the Duke transfer quarterback states that, quote, deadlines at other collegiate institutions who have indicated to me their interest in my enrollment will expire on Friday, January 23rd. That's today. Let me read you a little bit of this emergency motion. So basically, Mensah, obviously, he signed a contract with Duke, which they want to hold him accountable for. I think it's ultimately going to come down to a settlement, a lucrative settlement being paid. But then Mensah's argument now is, hey, you can't actually keep me from enrolling in another college, right? So a little bit from this motion he filed, these are written in the words of Darien Mensah. I understand the temporary restraining order, among other things, enjoins me from enrolling at another collegiate institution. After the hearing and as part of my efforts to comply with the TRO, an agent on my behalf communicated this restriction to other collegiate institutions who have indicated to me their interest in my enrollment and playing football. After the hearing, I learned for the first time that enrollment deadlines at other collegiate institutions who have indicated to me their interest in my enrollment will expire on Friday, January 3rd, 2026. There's a little bit more to it, but one thing that stands out to me, Kenton, is I feel like his representation should have communicated that a little bit better to him before today, that there are academic deadlines and we got to get you enrolled.
I have said this for quite some time, and this Darien Mensah case is becoming the greatest example of this. These players need to surround themselves with wise counsel. And wise counsel does not just mean in the sense of good people around you. No, literally, your counsel, your legal counsel needs to be wise. How the hell did nobody tell you hey, bro, it's gonna be we up against some very tight deadlines right now. I'm going through a legal battle myself where my lawyer alerts me of every deadline a month in advance.
Yeah.
Love the guy. Shout out to the guy because he tells me every time, hey, Ken, we about a month out from this deadline. You got to get this in. You got to send me this information. I need this. I need that. And you go on from there. How you are in a battle to continue to be a student athlete and a very well compensated student athlete, and they don't warn you about the student part, which comes first. Is what the hell are they doing? Just racking up billable hours on my boy? Oh,
the
my
lawyers
God.
always win.
Oh my God, this is foolishness.
Yep. The agents and the lawyers love it, seriously, because there's no caps on the commissions. There's no regulations. College football right now is controlled by that class, by the makeshift agents, the hire an agent overnight type of thing. And that's, the NFL has a standard protocol, right? You can't get away with any of this.
No.
So it's also, and it's not to take a jab at Miami, the Hurricanes. They need a quarterback, but there's nothing stopping them. And I've talked, I don't know how often you guys talk to Brian Smith, but our transfer portal recruiting expert, there's no spring transfer portal window anymore. Okay, well, eventually some college is going to make one by proxy. They're going to say there's an injury in spring camp. He just kind of laid it all out. He said, don't be surprised if we see a situation where somebody loses a star player, most likely a quarterback at some point. Yeah. But who knows, a running back, a linebacker, you could name just a player, a captain, face of the offense or the defense. And a team, who knows, is it going to be Texas Tech? Is it going to be LSU? Is it going to be Miami, right? The schools, but nobody's following the rules, right? These are just the teams that are kind of in the headlines right now, so to speak. There's going to be somebody that says after spring practice, hey, we need a ball player. Well, let's go and get them. There's nothing. Here's the thing, though. You can still transfer and enroll somewhere else. And who's going to stop you? Right. Try to stop us kind of thing. And that might happen outside of the portal window. You can still transfer as a student, but then there's that athlete component to it, right? So when's that shoe going to drop?
Yeah, so like with Mensah, so they're scheduled to have their next hearing on February 2nd, and the whole thing is a mess because the judge in Durham that granted the temporary restraining order, which was definitely, if it benefits Duke, obviously, but the judge who granted that TRO is a Duke basketball season ticket holder, and he's married to the librarian at Duke. So he's like, I'm going to grant Duke this TRO, but then I'm going to recuse myself for future hearings. But he still gave Duke that. And I think, if anything,
he did his job.
Right. So I'm sure Mensah's legal counsel is definitely going to use that as, hey, that's why you have to lift this in an emergency situation, because the judge who ruled on that was clearly biased. So the whole thing, and again, like I do feel that your signature on that paper should be worth something. So like, I've talked to lawyers about this. I had a lawyer on Locked On Canes earlier this week, and like, I think it's too late for Mensah to do what Damon Williams did. Like, he's not going to stay and play at Duke. I think that ship has already sailed. I do think he's going to wind up at Miami, but Kenton, it's going to cost Miami, $4+ million to settle the NIL situation with Duke. I think money is going to eventually solve this, but obviously, for Duke, they need to get something for this. Otherwise, the NIL deal is worthless. Now, it's an NIL deal. It's not an employment contract, but Duke is going to want to make sure that deal is worth something.
I mean, I think the biggest thing that if I was Duke, if I'm on their end, what I'm pushing for, I'm not selling anything. No. Go play for them. You can't make any money in marketing. Why can they pay you? No, we own your marketing right. You signed away your marketing rights for 2 years. You go over there. You have fun. Do you know how big Duke's endowment is? Do you know what those alums give back to Duke?
If I was basketball.
That's what I'm saying. If I was them, I wouldn't argue with anything. I'd say, hey, going over there, but we own the rights. And we're not selling them back to you, brother. We're not selling them back to you unless you pay me 2 to 3-fold what you've already, what you would have made. We're not selling a dime of these rights back to you. And you can claim it's punitive. You can claim whatever you want. At the end of the day, you were presented with a contract. You were presented with a contract that said for 2 years, your marketing, name, image, and likeness rights will belong exclusively Exclusively. Let's make that part important, because this ain't like when you messing around with a young lady and y'all two ain't exclusive yet. You're still on the market. You know, you've been on a couple of dates, but you're still on the apps and all that stuff. No. Y'all going steady like Donno and Mrs. Donno. You're committed. You signed on the dotted line. You went down to the courthouse and said, let's get married. You can't get it annulled because you see a finer woman walk by and think that she's not leaving with half your stuff. You can't just pass on her and say, oh, the nanny's looking looking petite. She looking pretty and petite. I got to get it. Yeah, okay. It's going to cost you something. Darian, Miami might be the petite nanny that's coming along saying, we got all these good things for you. Everything they're not doing, we'll do for you. But guess what? It's cheaper to keep her, or in this case, it's cheaper to stay with Duke for a reason. But even though that both sell, if I was Duke, I'm saying, go where you go. Just not your right stay.
Yeah. Well, let's give a quick rundown on biggest portal additions or subtractions. I mean, obviously, Miami's trying to get the Mensah thing over the finish line. Edge rusher Damon Wilson is the biggest addition Miami has made. Trying to fill those Reuben Bain Jr. shoes. I think this is about as good as you could possibly do. He just had a monster year at Mizzou. Kenton, I know you guys you guys brought in King Mack from Penn State. You're maybe bringing in multiple Miami wide receivers. What else has stood out?
Other than that, for NC State, obviously losing one of the best backs in the nation in Hollywood Smothers, that hurts. That hurts, right? Noah Rogers not as big of a loss, but you do still want to keep as many playmakers as possible, which is why NC State went out to replace him with a 6'4", 200-pound receiver. And I cannot remember the name for the life of me right now, but App State receiver who averaged 20 yards per catch at 6'4", 205. So that'll play. That'll play. You'll find your way onto a field doing that kind of activity. Ultimately, the biggest get that I would say in terms of upside and potential, NC State got top 15 tight end from last year's recruiting class, Vander Plug, 6'6",
yes,
242, big fella, can move. And he's only been playing the game for about 4 years, so he's still figuring it out in real time. He's still figuring it out, transferring out of Oregon, has 4 years of eligibility left. He could be something special for the Wolfpack, especially considering Coach Gavin Locklear, who I played with at NC State. Shout out to Coach Locklear, that's my boy. Had the top-rated tight end room in the nation in terms of PFF grade. I expect very good things out of Mr. Plug in short order.
Zach, biggest you could probably spend all day on this. We'll give the Reader's Digest version, as we used to say. Biggest additions, subtractions for Penn State.
I mean, I will say, hey, I thought I was going to get a summary about King Mack. Let me just say that's a great addition. He is a captain type of player. That's kind of what I was anticipating for Penn State. Didn't like that he entered the portal. Surprised he ended up at NC State because Poindexter went to Tennessee, and that would have made sense with Jim Knowles' defense because Mack was flourishing in Knowles' system. But that's a game changer type of player for NC State's defense. If you need a face of the defense, he can be your guy. For Penn State. And I also want to say about Darien Mensah, he is Duke. He's Duke football right now. I can't name another player on Duke's roster. So if he goes to
actually,
Miami,
the next player you would name, Cooper Barkate, receiver, is also trending to come to Miami with him.
There you go. So at Duke, you absolutely have to enforce that because you basically scrap the next season. You don't have a quarterback. You don't have your leading wide receiver. This is more than just $4 million in NIL. This is an entire 2026 season gone to waste. As far as look, we talked about Penn State. I like that they brought in over 10 starting caliber players, a few all-conference caliber players from Iowa State. I'm mostly pleased with the retention. The player retention, multiple starting offensive linemen, starting wide receiver, co-starter caliber running back. They got James Peoples from Ohio State. He was supposed to be RB1, never materialized for the Buckeyes this season. So there are a lot of things to like about this class, but they're not just the Penn State Nittany Cyclones. They didn't get the leftovers from Iowa State. They got guys that were either serious contributors. They did get a couple fringe names that you're not going to recognize, but most of them are guys that can play right away and be serious contributors.
Well, we appreciate always when we can connect with our guy Zach Seyko from Locked On Nittany Lions. Make sure you check him out. If you're an everydayer on Locked On ACC, make sure to check out Locked On Nittany Lions. If you're a Locked On Nittany Lions everydayer, make sure to check out Locked On ACC, not to mention Locked On Wolfpack that Kenton also hosts, Locked On Canes that I host, and we will talk to the everydayers next time. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club. Links are in the show notes below, and we'll talk to you right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are number one, and we are your team every day.